So what I would do is I would just go dash. Everybody do this one with me unless you got it. Dash 12. And then if you kept adding those into infinity, you're going to get a sum of 64. Now, this is weird. Not just one or two, but an infinite number of terms. That's crazy to get 64. All right, and then it says find the first three terms. So here's what I did. A plus A times R plus A times R squared goes on to infinity to give you 64. So 12 is equal to A times R. Do you agree with that? Does that agree? Okay, that is going to help you more than you realize. Then you're going to go the sum to infinity, which is 64, is equal to A over 1 minus R. Write that one down. With that information, see if you can figure it out. I'll leave you to that. See what you can. That's awesome. I want to figure out what A is, because A is the first term, right? So if we knew A, then we could figure out the R. I would find A. So what I would do is I would solve this one for R. 12 over A is equal to R. And then put this one in here. It's going to be kind of yucky, but it's not the worst. 64 is equal to A over 1 minus, instead of R, we'll call it 12 over A. Cross multiply, you get 64 times 1 minus 12 over A is equal to A. And you probably guessed we're going to have a quadratic involved. Now I always do this. Whenever you hear, or whenever you see quadratic, I go like this. Ugh, what's that smell? Ugh, it's quadratic. Because you can kind of tell when you have this 1 over 8, it's going to be quadratic. So 64 minus 64 times 12 over A is equal to A. So if you cross multiply, you get, or multiply everything by A, you get 64A minus 66, or is that 64? 64 times 12 equal to 64 minus 64 times 12 times A equals A squared, because we're multiplying everything by A. And of course, these canceled out. And that's going to be big, isn't it? It's going to be big. A squared minus 64A minus 64 times 12 equal to 0. We can do this with A, but A is going to be a little tougher, but let's see if we can do it. A, and it's going to be 64 times 12. Whew, that might be a little tough to do. I think 48 and 16. Yeah. So it's not going to be nice, but here goes. Minus 48 and minus 16 is 48 times 16, 64 times 12. It is. So those are going to be your two answers. That's pretty nasty. Let's try something else here. Let's do the same thing. You had 12 is equal to A times R. We got that. And we had 64 is equal to A over 1 minus R. Let's try getting rid of the R, or the A this time. So let's go A is equal to 12 over R. maybe the algebra will be easier. 64 is 12 over r, 1 minus r, cross multiply, and you get 64 times 1 minus r equals 12 over r. Smell quadratic again. 64 times r times 1 minus r is equal to 12. 64r minus 64r squared equals 12. So when we put everything on the same side, you're going to get 0 equals 64r squared minus 64r plus 12. Double check. Yeah. Divide by 4, and you're going to get 16r squared minus 16r plus 3. This is much easier to factor. It's just going to be minus minus. And so the two values for r will be 1/4 and 3/4. Okay. And so once you have that, 1/4 and 3/4, then you just go ahead and say, okay, multiply 12 by a fourth. 12 by a fourth is 3. 12 times 4 is 48. But look at that 3/4. That's weird. 3/4. You can multiply this by 3/4, and you're going to get 3 times 3 is 9. And if you go times 4/3, you're going to get 3 times 4 times 4 is 16. So the two answers you're going to have is 16, 12, and 9, and 48, 12, and 3. That can't be right. If you added those to infinity, is that possible? Doesn't seem right. But here a is 48, but r is 1/4. Here a is 16 and r is 3/4. Now here's what I want you to do. This side of the room, I want you to find the sum to infinity of 48 over 1 minus a fourth. This side of the room, over here, Liam's side and over, I want you to go sum to infinity of 16 over 1 minus 3/4. Let's see what you get. Come on, that's weird. Isn't that weird? That algebra got a little dicey there factoring, but that is the problem. Do they both give you 64? 48 over 3/4 and 16 over 1/4? Yeah, because what happens is 48 over 3 is going to be 16 times 4, which is 64. And this one, 16 times 4, is 64. So they both give you the same thing. Isn't that weird? So the answers for this one, there's two of them. 48, 12, 3, and 16, 12, 9. Any others from the homework? I wish that was a quick problem, but it's not. You okay with 9? You okay with all of these?